The stars looked different tonight. Admiral Vexithera stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the small blue planet grow larger on the main screen. For 3,000 years, his people had ruled the galaxy. They had conquered 47 different worlds without losing a single major battle. This tiny world would be number 48. "Sir, we have reached the target system," reported his communications officer. The young Zephyrian's voice carried the usual confidence that came with serving in the Third Conquest Fleet. They had never known defeat. Vexithera nodded slowly. His forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the planet below. The inhabitants called it Earth. Intelligence reports showed they were a primitive species that had barely learned to travel between stars. They used crude chemical rockets and had only recently discovered faster-than-light communication. It would be another easy victory. "Open a channel to the planet," he ordered. "Let us give them the standard surrender terms, far below on Earth's surface." Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison sat in a cramped bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility had been built during the Cold War, back when humans worried about fighting each other instead of aliens. Now it served as headquarters for something called the Earth Defense Coalition. The name sounded much more impressive than the reality. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and looked around the room. 36 officers and technicians worked at computer stations trying to coordinate Earth's defense. Most of them were scared. Jake couldn't blame them. 6 months ago, the biggest threat to humanity was climate change. Now alien warships hung in orbit like dark clouds. "Colonel Morrison, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet," called out Captain Lisa Brooks from her station. She commanded humanity's most advanced warship, a stealth frigate called the UES Defiance. It was roughly the size of a city bus compared to the alien ships that looked like floating cities. "Put it on the main screen," Jake said. The image that appeared made everyone in the bunker fall silent. Admiral Vexithera was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. His voice was smooth and cold when he spoke through the translation. "Device. Primitive inhabitants of the third planet," the alien began. "I am Admiral Vexithera of the Zephyrian hegemony. Your world has been selected for integration into our empire. You have 72 of your hours to surrender unconditionally. Submit now, and your species will be preserved as workers. Resist, and you will be eliminated." The transmission ended. The bunker remained quiet for several long seconds. Then someone started crying. Jake understood the feeling. Earth's entire space navy consisted of 12 ships. The aliens had brought over 300. "Sir," Lisa said quietly, "our sensors show their shields are active. Their weapons are charged. They're not bluffing." Jake nodded. He had expected this moment since the aliens first appeared. His grandfather had fought in Vietnam. His father had served in Afghanistan. Both men had told him stories about fighting enemies who seemed impossible to beat. Both had also taught him that sometimes the underdog wins by fighting dirty. "Get me Admiral Walsh on Luna Station," Jake ordered. Admiral Kevin Walsh appeared, on screen a few minutes later. The older man looked as tired as Jake felt. Luna Station was humanity's most important military base, built inside an old mining facility on the moon. It was supposed to be humanity's last line of defense, but everyone knew it wouldn't last long against alien weapons. "Jake, I've been monitoring their communications," Kevin said. "They're treating this like a training exercise. They think we'll surrender without a fight." "Will we?" Jake asked. Kevin was quiet for a moment. "The president is considering their offer. The civilian government thinks resistance is suicide." Jake felt anger building in his chest. "And what do you think?" "I think my grandfather didn't run from the Japanese at Pearl Harbor. My father didn't run from the Koreans at Chosin Reservoir. I'm not running from these blue-skinned bastards." Lisa looked up from her station. "Colonel, we're detecting movement in their fleet. Looks like they're positioning for orbital bombardment." Jake walked to the main screen and stared at the alien ships. They were beautiful in a terrifying way. Smooth curves and gleaming metal that caught the light from Earth's sun. Each ship was probably worth more than everything humanity had ever built. The aliens had energy shields that could stop nuclear weapons. They had plasma cannons that could melt steel from orbit. They had anti-grav technology and faster-than-light travel. But Jake remembered something his grandfather had told him about: the Vietnam War. The enemy had better equipment, better training, and more soldiers. But they didn't understand how Americans fought. They expected clean battles with clear rules. They got ambushes in the jungle and bombs hidden in rice paddies. "Lisa, how many of our ships are ready for combat?" Jake asked. "All 12, sir. But they're not much against what the aliens have." "I'm not talking about ship-to-ship combat," Jake said. "I'm talking about something else, something these aliens have never seen before." Lisa frowned. "What do you mean?" Jake smiled for the first time in days. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "I mean, these aliens have been fighting civilized wars for 3,000 years. They conquer planets by showing up with bigger guns and demanding surrender. They've never fought an enemy that doesn't play by the rules." He turned to face the room. Every person in the bunker was looking at him. Some were afraid. Some were angry. All of them were waiting to see what humanity would do next. "Get me Lieutenant Danny Parker," Jake ordered. "And find me every ship in the solar system that can carry a nuclear weapon. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, passenger liners, everything." "Sir, what are you planning?" Lisa asked. Jake's smile grew wider. "I'm planning to teach these aliens something they've never learned before. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one with nothing left to lose." Above them, the alien fleet waited patiently for humanity's surrender. Admiral Vexithara was already planning the victory celebration. In 72 hours, this primitive world would join the Zephyrian Empire. It would be quick, clean, and efficient. The aliens had no idea what was coming. The sun rose over a world at war. Lieutenant Danny Parker checked his watch as he walked through the hangar bay of Luna Station. In 6 hours, the alien deadline would expire. In 5 hours, he would be dead. The thought didn't scare him as much, as it should have. Danny looked at the ships lined up in the hangar. They weren't military vessels. The cargo hauler Lucky Strike used to carry supplies to Mars colonies. The mining ship Deep Digger had spent years breaking apart asteroids. The passenger liner Star Dream once carried tourists to see Jupiter's moons. Now they were all loaded with nuclear weapons. "You sure about this plan, Lieutenant?" asked Sergeant Mike Chen, checking the detonator on his ship's cargo hold. Mike was a good soldier, but Danny could see the fear in his eyes. They all knew this was a one-way trip. "I'm sure," Danny said. "These aliens think they understand warfare. They think it's about having bigger guns and better shields. They're about to learn different." On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Vexithara watched the countdown timer. 2 hours remained until the primitive humans would surrender. His fleet hung in perfect formation above the blue planet. Every ship's weapons were charged and ready. Every shield generator hummed with power. "Sir, we're detecting movement from the human moon base," reported his tactical officer. "Several small ships are launching." Vexithara barely glanced at the screen. "Probably evacuation vessels. Let them run. We can hunt them down later." He had no idea that 12 ships full of desperate humans were racing toward his fleet at maximum speed. Each ship carried enough nuclear weapons to level a city. More importantly, each ship carried humans who had decided that killing aliens was worth dying for. Danny's ship, Lucky Strike, led the formation. Through his cockpit window, he could see the massive alien vessels growing larger. Their energy shields shimmered like soap bubbles around each ship. Those shields had stopped every weapon humanity had tried so far, but they had never been tested against a ship full of nuclear bombs flying at ramming speed. "All ships, this is Parker," Danny said into his radio. "Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to hurt them so bad they think twice about messing with Earth." The alien tactical officer frowned at his screen. "Sir, the human ships are not changing course. They appear to be on a collision vector." Vexithara laughed. "Collision? With our shields active? Their primitive ships will bounce off like insects hitting a window." "Should we destroy them, sir?" "No. Let them crash into our shields. It will be a good demonstration of Zephyrian superiority." The first cargo ship hit the alien cruiser Voidstalker at 3,000 kilometers per hour. The ship's hull vaporized instantly against the energy shield. But the nuclear weapons inside kept going. 10 fusion bombs detonated against the shield generator in a chain reaction that lit up space like a small sun. The Void Stalker's shield collapsed. The ship's hull cracked open like an egg. Atmosphere rushed out into space, carrying alien bodies with it. The cruiser listed to 1. Side its engines dead. What happened? Vexthera demanded. How did they penetrate our shields? The shield generators weren't designed for this kind of impact, sir, his engineering officer said. The primitive kinetic energy combined with nuclear detonation created a resonance cascade. Before Vexthera could respond, the second human ship hit another cruiser, then the third, then the fourth. Each impact sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. Each explosion proved that human shields could be beaten by human determination. Danny's ship was the last to hit. He aimed for the largest alien vessel he could find and pushed his engines to maximum power. In the final seconds before impact, he thought about his sister back on Earth. He thought about his dog. He thought about the alien admiral who had threatened to eliminate humanity. "This is for Earth, you bastards," Danny said, and hit the detonator. The explosion tore through the alien battleship's shield like it was made of paper. The ship's entire forward section disappeared in a ball of nuclear fire. Secondary explosions rippled through the vessel as its own weapons cooked off. On the planet below, Major Sam Rodriguez watched the explosions through his binoculars. The alien ships in orbit were burning. Some were drifting dead in space, others were trying to reform their battle lines. "Well, I'll be damned," Sam said to his Marines. "The crazy bastards actually did it." Sam had been a soldier for 15 years. He had fought in 3 different wars against human enemies, but he had never seen anything like what was about to happen on Earth. The aliens had started landing troops 6 hours ago. They wore powered armor and carried energy weapons. They moved in perfect formations and followed precise tactical plans. They had no idea what guerrilla warfare meant. The first alien patrol walked into Sam's ambush at exactly noon. The aliens moved down the road in a neat column, their sensors sweeping for human military units. They found a roadside bomb instead. The Yar explosion flipped their lead vehicle and sent alien soldiers flying through the air. Sam's Marines opened fire from hidden positions. They used hunting rifles and shotguns loaded with steel slugs. The alien armor was tough, but it wasn't designed to stop large-caliber bullets fired from close range. "Move! Move! Move!" Sam shouted as his Marines fell back to their next position. The aliens were already calling for reinforcements and air support, but Sam's people knew these woods. They had been playing war games here since they were children. The aliens spent the next hour chasing ghosts. Every time they found a human position, it was already empty. Every time they tried to advance, another roadside bomb exploded. Every time they called for backup, human snipers picked off their officers. Captain Angela Torres watched the battle from her mining platform in the asteroid belt. The rock crusher wasn't built for war, but it was big and heavy and moving fast. She had been accelerating toward the alien fleet for the past 4 hours. "Ma'am, we're getting close to their outer perimeter," her pilot said. "They're starting to scan us." "Good," Angela said. "Let them scan. They'll see a mining platform full of scared civilians trying to run away." What they wouldn't see was the platform's cargo hold, packed with every explosive device Angela's crew could find. Mining platforms carried a lot of explosives. They needed them to break apart asteroids. Now those explosives were about to break apart something else. The alien destroyer Swift Death moved to intercept the mining platform. Its captain planned to disable the human vessel and capture the crew for interrogation. He had no idea that Angela had no intention of being captured. "Ram them," Angela ordered. The rock crusher hit the alien destroyer at full speed. The mining platform's reinforced hull tore through the destroyer's shield and armor like a knife through cloth. Both ships disappeared in an explosion that could be seen from Earth. By the end of the first day, the Zephyrian Third Conquest Fleet had lost 12 ships. They had faced an enemy that didn't fight fair, didn't follow rules, and didn't care about dying. For the first time in 3,000 years, Zephyrian soldiers were afraid. Admiral Vexthera stared at the casualty reports. His perfect fleet was burning. His ground troops were being hunted through forests by invisible enemies. His tactical computers couldn't predict what these insane humans would do next. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "High Command is requesting a status report." Vexthera looked at the planet below. Somewhere down there, humans were planning their next attack. Somewhere in space, more human ships were loading weapons and choosing targets. These primitive creatures had drawn first blood in a war the Zephyrians thought would be over in hours. "Tell High Command," Vexthera said slowly, "that we may need reinforcements." 3 weeks had passed since the first battle. Admiral Vexthera stood in his private quarters aboard the Eternal Dominion, reading reports that made his stomach turn. 12 ships lost to human suicide attacks. 47 ground vehicles destroyed by roadside bombs. Over 300 Zephyrian soldiers killed by invisible human fighters who struck without warning and disappeared like smoke. The door chimed and General Kremos entered. The newcomer was shorter than Vexthera but twice as broad, with scars covering his blue skin. He commanded the 4th Battle Group sent by High Command to end this embarrassing conflict. "Admiral," Kremos said, his voice like grinding metal, "I have reviewed your tactical reports. How did you manage to lose so many ships to such primitive creatures?" Vexthera felt his face burn with shame. "General, these humans do not fight, like any species we have encountered. They use tactics that our computers cannot predict." "Nonsense," Kremos replied. "They are barely evolved primates with crude technology. I have brought planet-killer weapons. We will end this quickly." Far below on Earth's surface, Colonel Jake Morrison moved through an abandoned subway tunnel beneath New York City. The tunnel had been converted into a command center after the aliens destroyed the Pentagon with orbital bombardment. "Emergency." Lights cast strange shadows on the concrete walls. "Sir, we're getting reports from all sectors," said Major Julie Foster, looking up from her radio equipment. Julie had been a high school teacher before the war. Now she organized resistance cells across 6 continents. "What's the situation?" Jake asked. "Good news and bad news," Julie replied. "The good news is our hit-and-run attacks are working, and the aliens have pulled back from 12 major cities. The bad news is they're getting reinforcements. Satellite imagery shows another fleet arriving." Jake nodded grimly. He had expected this. The aliens were adapting, learning from their mistakes. Soon they would stop trying to capture Earth intact and simply destroy it from orbit. "Any word from Captain Thompson's raiders?" Jake asked. "He hit another supply convoy yesterday," Julie said with a smile. "Captured 2 cargo ships full of alien equipment. Rick says his people are getting good at pirate tactics." Captain Rick Thompson floated in zero gravity aboard his flagship, a converted passenger liner called the Freedom Song. Around him, his crew worked to repair battle damage from their latest raid. Most of his people had been civilians 6 months ago. Now they were the terror of alien supply lines. "Captain, we've got another convoy on long-range sensors," reported his navigator, a former cruise ship officer named Betty Walsh. 3 cargo ships with 2 destroyer escorts. Rick grinned. "Same plan as before. We hit fast, grab what we can, and run before their reinforcements arrive. These aliens still don't understand how pirates think." The alien convoy traveled through space in perfect formation. The cargo ships carried weapons, food, and medical supplies for the occupation forces on Earth. The destroyer captains were confident in their ability to protect the convoy. They had energy shields, plasma cannons, and superior speed. What they didn't have was experience fighting enemies who used hit-and-run tactics. Rick's ships came out of the asteroid field at maximum speed. Instead of trying to destroy the convoy, they targeted the engines and weapon systems. Human boarding parties swarmed onto the cargo ships through hull breaches, fighting hand-to-hand combat in the corridors. The alien crews had never faced boarding actions. Their training focused on ship-to-ship combat at long range. When humans with shotguns and crowbars came charging through their airlocks, the aliens panicked. Within 30 minutes, Rick's raiders had captured 2 cargo ships and disabled both destroyers. They disappeared back into the asteroids before the alien rescue fleet arrived, leaving behind only wreckage and confused survivors. On Earth, Dr. Helen Chang worked in a secret laboratory hidden beneath a hospital in Chicago. Before the war, she had been researching treatments for lung disease. Now she was developing something very different: The protein structure looks stable, she told her assistant, a young man named Peter Kim, who had been a medical student. The delivery system should target their respiratory filters specifically. Helen's team had been studying captured alien equipment for weeks. They discovered that Zephyrian soldiers used artificial breathing apparatus to filter Earth's atmosphere. The aliens couldn't breathe human air without mechanical help. That weakness gave Helen an idea. She developed an airborne pathogen that would attack the filters, causing them to malfunction. It wouldn't kill the aliens directly, but it would force them to retreat to their ships for clean air. "Are you sure this will work?" Peter asked nervously. "I'm sure it won't hurt humans," Helen replied. "As for the aliens, we're about to find out." The first test came during an alien patrol through downtown Detroit. Staff Sergeant Tony Martinez had been waiting for this moment. Tony grew up in Detroit's roughest neighborhoods. He knew every alley, every abandoned building, every sewer entrance in the city. The alien patrol moved carefully through the ruined streets. Their sensors swept for human life signs, but Tony's people were hidden in places the aliens would never think to look. Old subway tunnels, storm drains, and basements connected by holes cut through walls. When the aliens reached the intersection of Michigan Avenue and Cass Street, Tony triggered Helen's weapon. Canisters hidden in buildings released invisible clouds of the pathogen. Within minutes, the alien soldiers were gasping and choking as their breathing equipment failed. "Now!" Tony shouted. His fighters emerged from hiding like ghosts. They used hunting rifles, homemade explosives, and anything else they could find. The aliens tried to fight back, but they couldn't breathe. Half the patrol died in the ambush, the rest fled back to their ships. General Kremos received the reports with growing anger. Human raiders were capturing his supply ships. Human scientists were developing biological weapons. Human fighters were turning every Earth city into a death trap. "Order orbital bombardment of the major population centers," he commanded. "If we cannot capture this world intact, we will sterilize it." The order went out to the fleet. Energy weapons began charging for a strike that would kill millions of humans. But Kremos had made the same mistake as every other alien commander. He thought like a civilized being. Colonel Morrison had been expecting this move. Deep in his underground bunker, he activated a plan that had been months in the making. Across Earth's surface, hidden launchers revealed themselves. They weren't aimed at the alien ships. They were aimed at Earth's own cities. "If you want to destroy our world," Jake said into his radio broadcast to the alien fleet, "you'll have to do it with our nuclear weapons mixed in. Every major city on Earth now has fusion bombs placed by our own people. Destroy us and the radiation will make this planet uninhabitable for your species too." Admiral Vexithara stared at the tactical display in horror. The humans had turned their own world into a trap. They were willing to poison their planet rather than let the aliens have it. "They're insane," he whispered. "Yes," General Kremos agreed grimly, "and that makes them more dangerous than we ever imagined." The alien fleets hung in orbit, their weapons charged but useless. Below them, humans waited in tunnels and bunkers, ready to fight to the last breath. The war had reached a stalemate that neither side had planned for, but the humans were just getting started. 6 months had passed since the alien invasion began. The war had settled into a deadly pattern that neither side could break. The aliens controlled the skies and the space around Earth, but humans owned the ground. Every day brought new casualties, new destruction, and new proof that this conflict would not end quickly. Commander Paul Jensen crouched in the maintenance shaft of an alien transport ship, his heart pounding against his ribs. He and his team had spent 3 weeks planning this mission. Getting aboard the enemy vessel had been the easy part. Getting to the ship's communication center would be much harder. Paul had been a NASA engineer before the war. He understood spacecraft systems better than most people understood their own cars. That knowledge had made him valuable to the human resistance. Now he was about to use it to strike at the heart of the alien fleet. "How much further?" whispered Maria Santos, the team's explosives expert. She had been a computer programmer before the war, but she learned quickly how to make things explode. "2 more levels," Paul replied quietly. "Stay close and keep quiet." The alien ship hummed around them with sounds they didn't recognize. Strange lights pulsed in patterns that hurt their eyes. The air smelled like ozone and something else they couldn't identify. This was enemy territory in the truest sense. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, Major Susan Wright stood in what used to be a car factory in Detroit. The assembly line that once built automobiles now produced something very different. Human workers, many of them former auto workers, were building weapons designed to kill aliens. "How many missiles can we produce per day?" Susan asked her production supervisor, an older man named Bill who had worked in the factory for 30 years. "We're up to 50 anti-aircraft missiles per day," Bill replied, "plus maybe 100 of those improvised explosives the resistance cells like. Not pretty, but they work." Susan nodded. The weapons weren't as advanced as alien technology, but they were effective. More importantly, they were made by humans who understood exactly what they were fighting for. Every rivet, every wire, every explosive charge was installed by someone who had lost friends or family to the invaders. The factory was one of dozens across the Great Lakes region. Human industry had adapted to war production faster than anyone expected. Automotive plants built missiles. Electronics factories produced communication jamming equipment. Even toy companies had switched to making components for weapon systems. The aliens had made a critical error. They assumed that destroying government buildings and military bases would cripple human resistance. They didn't understand that human industrial capacity was spread across thousands of small facilities, each one capable of producing weapons. "Captain," Larry Bell peered through the periscope of his submarine, the USS Wolverine. The old nuclear submarine had been scheduled for retirement before the war began. Now it was one of humanity's most effective weapons against the alien occupation. "Contact bearing 270, reported his sonar operator. "Looks like another underwater mining operation." Larry smiled grimly. The aliens had established several underwater facilities to extract minerals from Earth's ocean floor. They thought the depths would protect them from human attack. They were wrong. "Take us to attack depth," Larry ordered. "Load torpedo tubes, 1 and 2. The Wolverine glided silently through the dark water. The aliens had powerful sensors, but they were designed to detect spacecraft, not submarines. Their underwater installations were defended by energy shields and plasma weapons that worked poorly in water. Larry's torpedoes were old-fashioned explosive warheads, the kind that had been used in wars for over a century. Simple, reliable, and deadly. The alien shields flickered and died under the pressure of underwater explosions. High above the ocean, Pilot Officer Amy Davis flew her modified fighter through a maze of alien patrol ships. Her aircraft had started life as a civilian racing plane. Now it carried weapons reverse-engineered from captured alien technology. Bandit at 3 o'clock called her wingman, a former Air Force pilot named Jack Miller. "He's trying to get a lock on you." Amy rolled her fighter and dove toward the cloud layer. The alien pilot followed, firing energy bolts that lit up the sky. But Amy had something the alien didn't expect. Her plane was equipped with a jamming device built from alien communication equipment. The alien's targeting system went haywire. His energy bolts missed by hundreds of meters. Amy climbed back above the clouds and fired her own weapons, a mixture of human missiles and alien energy cannons. The alien ship exploded in a ball of fire and debris. "That's number 12 for this week," Jack said over the radio. "These hybrid weapons are really working." Amy nodded inside her helmet. Human engineers had been studying captured alien technology for months. They couldn't build shields or faster-than-light drives, but they could copy weapons and sensors. The technological gap was closing slowly but steadily. Back aboard the alien transport, Commander Paul Jensen reached his target. The ship's quantum communication array was a masterpiece of alien engineering. It allowed instant communication across the galaxy, connecting the invasion fleet to their home world. "Set the charges," Paul whispered to his team. "We have maybe 10 minutes before they detect us." Maria Santos worked quickly, placing explosive devices at critical points throughout the communication center. The charges were designed to create a chain reaction that would destroy the entire array and damage the ship's other systems. "Charges set," Maria reported. "Timer is active." Paul's team moved quickly toward their escape route. They had practiced. This mission dozens of times in abandoned buildings on Earth. But practicing and doing were very different things. Alien security forces were already responding to intruder alerts. The explosion shook the entire ship. The quantum communication array disappeared in a flash of light and energy. Secondary explosions rippled through the vessel as other systems overloaded. The flagship of the alien fleet went dark, cut off from command and control. Admiral Vex Thara felt the explosion through the deck plates of his bridge. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as damage reports flooded in. His ship's main communication system was destroyed. His connection to high command was severed. "Sir, we're getting reports from across the fleet," his tactical officer said. "The humans have infiltrated 17 ships in the past month. They're using our own technology against us." Vexathara stared at the tactical display. Red markers showed damaged ships throughout his fleet. Human raiders had captured supply vessels. Human submarines had destroyed underwater installations. Human fighters were shooting down his patrols with hybrid weapons. General Kremos appeared on the bridge, his face dark with anger. "This is unacceptable," he snarled. "We have lost more ships and soldiers in 6 months than in the previous 6 years combined." "The humans are adapting faster than we anticipated," Vexathara replied. "Every tactic we use, they find a counter-tactic. Every technology we deploy, they find a way to steal or duplicate." "Then we must end this quickly," Kremos said. "I am requesting permission to use the Void Hammer." Vexathara felt his blood turn cold. The Void Hammer was a weapon that could crack planets open like eggs. It had been used only once in Zephyrian history, to destroy a rebel world that had refused to surrender. "General, using that weapon would destroy everything we came here to capture," Vexathara protested. "Better a dead world than a rebellious one," Kremos replied. "These humans are spreading their resistance tactics to other species. 3 worlds have already begun uprising. If we don't stop this here, the entire empire could fall." Unknown to the aliens, their conversation was being recorded by human listening devices planted throughout their fleet. Within hours, the intelligence would reach Colonel Morrison's command bunker. The humans were about to learn that their enemy was preparing to destroy Earth rather than lose the war. The final battle was approaching, and both sides knew that only one species would survive. On a dozen worlds across the galaxy, conquered peoples watched the skies and waited. If the humans could defeat the mighty Zephyrian Empire, then perhaps freedom was possible for everyone. The war for Earth had become something much larger. The revolution had begun. 1 year had passed since the first alien ship appeared in Earth's sky. General Jake Morrison stood in his underground command center, surrounded by reports that painted a picture of desperate hope and approaching doom. The intelligence was clear. The aliens were bringing their planet-killer weapon to Earth. "How long do we have?" Jake asked Captain Kate Murphy, who had just returned from evacuating civilians to the outer colonies. 6 days, maybe 7, Kate replied. "Our deep space sensors detected the Void Hammer leaving their home system. When it gets here, they can crack Earth open like an egg." Jake nodded grimly. He had been promoted after the previous commander died in an alien bombing raid. Now he carried the weight of humanity's survival on his shoulders. Around him, officers and technicians worked with quiet determination. They all knew this would be humanity's last battle. "What about our fleet?" Jake asked. "Lieutenant Colonel." Barry Stone looked up from his tactical display. Barry had been assembling every human ship that could still fly. Military vessels, cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining ships, even private yachts. Anything with engines and space for weapons. "We have 437 ships ready for combat," Barry reported. "Most of them are civilians with basic weapons. Against the alien fleet, we'll be lucky to damage 10 of their ships before they destroy us all." "That's not the plan," Jake said quietly. "We're not trying to win a fair fight. We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to make them bleed so much they never forget it." Across the solar system, human ships began moving toward Earth. Captain Kate Murphy led the evacuation fleet carrying women, children, and elderly civilians toward the safety of Mars colonies. Behind them came the war fleet, a ragged collection of vessels crewed by volunteers who knew they were flying to their deaths. The alien response was swift and overwhelming. War Master Thexnel had replaced both Admiral Vexithara and General Kremos after their failures. Thexnel commanded the First Armada, the most powerful military force in Zephyrian history. 500 warships surrounded Earth like a steel cage. Begin the final bombardment, Thexnel ordered from his flagship. Destroy every human settlement, every military base, every sign of resistance. When the Void Hammer arrives, this world will be cleansed and ready for proper colonization. The bombardment began at dawn. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, turning human cities into lakes of molten glass. Missile barrages shattered mountain ranges where human bunkers might be hidden. The aliens were no longer trying to capture Earth intact. They wanted to erase humanity from existence. But humans had been preparing for this moment for months. As alien weapons destroyed the surface, underground facilities launched their counterattack. Every remaining nuclear weapon on Earth rose into the sky at once. Hundreds of missiles carrying fusion warheads streaked toward the alien fleet. All ships, this is Stone, Barry broadcast to the human fleet. Operation Pyrrhus is now active. Remember, we're not trying to survive this fight. We're trying to hurt them so bad they tell stories about it for 1,000 years. The space battle that followed became legendary across the galaxy. Human ships charged the alien fleet in waves, each vessel carrying every weapon its crew could fit aboard. They rammed alien cruisers with mining ships loaded with explosives. They fired nuclear torpedoes from converted cargo haulers. They used suicide bombers, boarding parties, and weapons that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Major Carol Lewis led the most desperate assault of all. Her team of Marines had trained for months to board and capture alien ships. Now they launched themselves at the enemy flagship in stolen alien shuttles, fighting their way through corridors filled with poisonous atmosphere and deadly radiation. "Target the bridge," Carol shouted to her Marines as they blasted through an airlock. Around her, human soldiers fired shotguns and assault rifles at aliens wearing powered armor. It was primitive weapons against advanced technology. But the humans had something the aliens lacked. They had nothing left to lose. The battle raged for 18 hours. Human ships died by the dozens, but they took alien vessels with them. Boarding. Parties fought hand-to-hand combat in alien corridors. Nuclear explosions lit up space like deadly fireworks. The humans lost 9 ships for every alien vessel they destroyed, but they kept coming. War Master Thexnel watched his fleet burn with growing horror. These creatures fought like demons, using tactics no civilized species would consider. They turned their own ships into weapons. They used biological warfare, psychological terror, and suicidal determination. "Sir, the humans have broken through to Deck 7, reported his security chief. "They're fighting toward the bridge." Thexnel could hear the sound of gunfire getting closer. Somewhere in his ship, human Marines were killing his crew with primitive weapons and raw courage. The most advanced military force in the galaxy was being defeated by barely evolved primates who refused to surrender. "Sir, we're receiving surrender," demands from the human commander. His communications officer said. "Surrender?" Thexnel asked in disbelief. "They want us to surrender?" On the main screen, the scarred face of General Jake Morrison appeared. Behind him, smoke and emergency lights showed a command center that had been hit by orbital bombardment. But Morrison's eyes burned with unshakable determination. "War Master Thexnel," Morrison said calmly, "you have 2 choices. Order your fleet to withdraw from Earth immediately, or we will destroy every ship you have. We've captured your flagship. We have nuclear charges planted throughout your fleet. Surrender now, or watch your entire armada die." Thexnel looked at the tactical display. Over half his ships were damaged or destroyed. Human boarding parties had infiltrated 17 vessels. Nuclear mines attached to his remaining ships were ready to detonate on Morrison's command. The humans had done the impossible. They had defeated the mightiest fleet in galactic history using nothing but courage, determination, and their willingness to die for freedom. "All ships," Thexnel said slowly, "withdraw to minimum safe distance. Cease all hostile operations." The Zephyrian First Armada pulled back from Earth, beaten and bloodied by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive savages. When the Void Hammer arrived 3 days later, Its commander found a fleet in full retreat and a human species that had earned the respect of the entire galaxy. Word of humanity's victory spread across 100 worlds. Rebellion erupted on every planet the Zephyrians had conquered. The mighty empire that had ruled for 3,000 years began to crumble as species after species rose up against their oppressors. On Earth, survivors emerged from bunkers and underground shelters to find their world scarred but free. Cities lay in ruins, but the human spirit remained unbroken. They had proven that technology meant nothing against determination, that superior numbers couldn't defeat superior will. General Morrison stood in the wreckage of New York City, watching alien ships disappear into hyperspace. Around him, humans began the long work of rebuilding their civilization. But they would rebuild as equals among the stars, not as conquered slaves. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The species that had learned to fight in caves and jungles had taught the universe a lesson that would echo through history. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one with nothing left to lose. And sometimes, the primitive weapons are wielded by the most advanced minds of all.